we're going to roll out an army of gang stalkers across the United States to mess with people, to track people, to surveil people, to follow people, and to make their lives a general hell to live every day, then you would have to do it covertly. You would have to do it in a way that is not noticeable to the rest of society. And in fact, the tactics that are used by private security companies and gang stalkers at large are specifically designed to avoid detection, not from the targeted individual, but to avoid detection from the general public. And so it's a very interesting surveillance situation. It fits right in with other surveillance situations where they want the targeted individual to know that they're following them. And so in a normal surveillance situation, you do not want the person you're following to know that you're following them. They actually want the TI to know they're being followed because it has the maximum psychological impact. While at the same time, they need to do it in a way that your neighbors and your friends and your coworkers and your family do not know that they are doing this to you, because the entire point of the program is to convince everybody else that the TI is crazy. And so they need to surveil you and gang stalk you in such a way that other people don't notice that they're doing it. But this is the general appearance that they give, and so it's to be intimidating. And there's a very fine line between kind of the military intimidation and what you would call a gangster or a thug intimidation. And both aspects, of course, are there on purpose, and gang stalking has been designed specifically to have both aspects there. They want you to believe that your country hates you. They also want you to believe that you're in great danger all the time. And the thug, gangster aspect of the vibe that they're giving off is there specifically for that reason. And so you can start to see how psychologically this is going to have an effect on someone very, very quickly. If they're under the impression that the military, their own government, and then a bunch of thugs are following and chasing them around the country, it has a devastating psychological effect. But it's also important to note that despite the unsavory characters that are within this, the entire point of it is a hands-off policy. And this is very, very evil the way they're doing this. So, I mean, not in any way defending them. I'm making the opposite point. The hands-off policy is in place by private security companies and gang stalkers, the federal government, and everybody else involved in this, specifically to have the excuse and say, we didn't actually physically harm this person. We never struck them. We never shot them. We never hit them. We never did any physical harm to them. So everything that's done by this program is meant to have a psychological effect, and the psychological effect is meant to complement the effect that the technology is having on the individual, so that they are brought to a place in their life where they're isolated, they're broke, they're unemployed, they have no family, they have no friends, and nobody in the general public can track or trace anything that's being done to them because the technology is remote and it's wireless, and there's usually no physical signs left on the individual that anything is being done to them. And the interaction with gang stalkers within the community, there is no physical evidence that any gang stalking ever went on. They are specifically instructed, do not slash anyone's tires. Don't, vandalize their house. That is not the point of the program. The point of the program is to have maximum psychological effect and leave the minimal amount of evidence. And so you can see how this hands-off policy, and this is a standard term that's used within the private security industry in terms of what security guards and security personnel are supposed to do in terms of a threat. You are supposed to maintain a hands-off policy at all costs until you absolutely must intervene physically or with use of force. And so that's kind of an industry term that's been adopted by gang stalkers as a hands-off policy against the TI, so that when that person ends up in a hospital or ends up physically deteriorated, they can't turn around and blame the gang stalkers because they were never, quote-unquote, touched or physically harmed by them, even though all of the harm that's done to TIs is done by the gang stalkers, it's done by the federal government that endorses this program, and it's done by the technology, and therefore the gang stalkers, the technology, and the federal government is liable and responsible 100% for everything that's been done to the TI.